difficult to know when we're actually live.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, hello everybody. We have 8 people watching so far, and I just want to welcome you, Gemma, and thank you so much. I know this is really scary when you come on something like this and you've got to talk about yourself. Well, you don't have to, but it would be more interesting for everybody if you would.
Yeah.
And so this is really about you telling us a bit about your story, because I know you had back pain for a long time and the other symptoms, and it's really about hearing more about what your life was. Maybe let's start off with what was your life like? How did it affect you? What did you try to do initially to try and recover?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Georgie. So yeah, it started in London actually. We were living there. We're both, me and my husband, working in hotels, and we had enough, and we decided to move to Dubai. We had a moving date, and about 2 or 3 weeks before, I had a really minor I was doing an acrobatic thing, and I twisted my back, and it was really minor. And normally I wouldn't go to the doctors at all for something like that. But what was going through my mind was, I don't know if there's doctors in Dubai. And so because of that, I went to the doctor and got, pain relief. And then when I moved to Dubai, it just never got better. But it was just niggly. I would just describe it as niggly. And then gradually, it got worse and worse. So yeah, the sort of things I did was physio. A lot of tablets. My favorite thing was the machine. Is it the TENS machine?
Yes,
yeah. So I would come out of work regularly and go and lie on a table where I would do this. And
was this in Dubai? Had you got to Dubai?
Right. Yes. So once we got to Dubai, and in hindsight now, I can see it's stressful moving countries. So I looking back, I can see the link, and and I know most people watching this understand TMS and everything. So it's really obvious now, but at the time I had no idea. So I kept going for the physio and the tablets, and gradually it started to get worse, and then I think I had a spinal injection thing at one point, quite early on, and that fixed it for a short time, as usual. And then I think I had maybe 2 or 3 of these whilst I was in Dubai, and it never really worked. So then I started doing osteopath visits. But it's Dubai, so it's extortionate pricing. So I didn't continue with this, and it's that's not under the insurance. So I was just a bit desperate. But then, to be honest, we were in Dubai for 8 years, and during that time, sometimes I had pain, sometimes I didn't. It would come and go, and I didn't really notice at the time. And I kept thinking, oh, it'll get better, and it never got better, But what was most interesting for me, looking back now in hindsight, I had 2 babies when we were in Dubai, and for both pregnancies, I had no back pain at all. Nothing, zero back pain until they were born. And then shortly after both of them, the back pain came back in a really big way. So of course, in my mind, I was thinking, well, it's because my spine moved. When I had a baby, my spine moved, and therefore my back is hurting. And so I just completely justified it. And I was like, oh, let's start the tablets again. And, I've already upgraded my bed and my chair, and I stopped wearing heels. So, I've got these funny shoes that are supposed to be good for your back. So it's so funny. But then again, looking back, after both my children were born, my husband was made redundant during my maternity leave. And so the way it works in Dubai, we have I was under my own insurance, and because I was working full time, and my husband had his own insurance. So but the benefits are shared. So we lived in his house, and so when he was made redundant, all the benefits came on to me, which was a huge responsibility. So instead of wanting to go back to work, I suddenly needed to go back. And in Dubai, you only get, at that time, I'm not sure if it's the same now, you get 45 days maternity leave. So I had emergency C-section, and then my husband made redundant, and then straight back into work.
And no family near you either.
No family at all. Well, obviously family are in the UK.
Yes. Wow.
So yeah, it was
tough.
it was not easy. And then the second pregnancy, again, no pain whatsoever, nothing. And then again, second child was born, and straight away back pain came. But the same thing had happened, just on a big restructure, and my husband was made redundant again, just purely by chance. So the same thing happened again. And I think, looking back, I was trying to be strong for him, strong for me, strong for the kids. And also I was still working. I had a busy job. So yeah.
That's a tough time, really tough time.
Yeah. And then, so, I mean, this is like the fast forwarded version. But the other thing that when I was thinking about this interview of what to tell people, I found out I could still cycle. I love running and cycling, and I realized I could still cycle. So even though I had really bad back pain, like really bad, I could still cycle 50 kilometers on a weekend in the desert. And it was amazing with the pain, because there was no pain when I was cycling.
That's right.
And I told myself that there was no pain because you're bent over on a bicycle, and my spine was bent like this. So I was like, because my spine is bent like this, I can easily cycle. And it's, and then I was like, in the Dubai heat is relaxing my muscles. So then it became like, I'm going cycling because it's the only thing that doesn't hurt. So it's really funny. So throughout all this time, I was still able to keep physically fit, thank goodness, because of this. So yeah, and then towards the end of Dubai, the reason we left Dubai was because of the second redundancy, and my husband got a job in Sri Lanka, but I had a 3-month notice period. So I stayed in Dubai with the kids, and Chris was in Sri Lanka for 3 months, and my back was just getting worse and worse and worse.
No surprise there.
Obviously, I can see now. And and so as I was doing my notice period, and then I knew I wouldn't be able to fly with the kids because I couldn't hardly carry them. Like it would, my littlest was 6 months, and the other one was 2. So 2-year-old and a 6-month-old. So we had my mum fly from the UK to Dubai just to help me pack up the house and fly the kids back to the UK before we then went on to Sri Lanka.
Right.
So
goodness.
Yeah.
So life was really very challenging for you in all ways.
Yeah, it was, but it's just really funny because it wasn't all the time. Like it got worse, and then it got better, and gradually over the 8 years, I would say it progressively got worse and worse and worse. Right. But I just carried on. Like it was stupid. Like I would be in meetings and I would stand up in meetings like that was normal.
Yeah,
it was just
became normal for you.
Yeah, and then at one point, because I worked in human resources, so I was a director of HR, sitting at my desk, and then I would go to the training room to lie on the floor for my spine to like decompress, and so that I could carry on. And it's So anyway, that's the kind of the Dubai story in a nutshell.
Then you moved to Sri Lanka.
Yes. So then we moved to Sri Lanka. We arrived in Sri Lanka on New Year's Eve, 2017. So this was exciting. And it was the first time since I was 14 that I didn't have a job or education. I literally had gone from full-time employment to being a stay-at-home mom, literally just overnight. And and I knew that's what I was doing, and that was part of our bigger plan. But nothing prepared me for that. And also I think it was a big shock going from Dubai, which is, it has everything you could possibly imagine, every single shop, and then you go to Sri Lanka, and it was at that time it was very much a developing country, like it still is, but that they're just, I couldn't even push the pushchair along the streets because the pavement's all broken, like basic things like that. So it was very interesting move, and I had no friends because we just arrived, and obviously I didn't know anyone here. So My husband,
children.
I've got the children. Husband goes off to work, and how do you fill a whole day? What do you do? Like, I just had never done it before. and so yes, this was January, and then at the end of January, he went to Abu Dhabi for a work thing for 4 days,
Right.
and I literally could not pick up the baby, and so I'm there with no friends, with these 2 kids, and yeah, it wasn't a happy time. Anyway, he but it's like I'm laughing because I shouldn't be laughing, but like I'm laughing because in hindsight, I know why. Like, I'm in a country on my own, and my husband's not even there, and I've got kids, and I can hardly walk. So then I started in February a coaching course, because there's no way I can't not work. I had to do something, and I thought, well, I'll retrain as a coach, because I was already a Clifton Strengths coach, and I just needed something to go with that. And as part of this, I decided one day, I woke up and I was like, that is it. I am going to fix my back pain, whatever it takes. So something shifted in my head, and then I went all out, and I made myself a physio plan, and I started doing all like you can imagine, I did like the most amount of like back lifts you could possibly imagine, just thinking I was doing some kind of good, and just nothing was working. I went to a chiropractor, and he wouldn't touch me. He's like, with this MRI, there's no way I can do anything for you. And so I came back.
What did the MRI show?
It's an L5S1, and it was a herniated, is it called herniated disc? And it had gone through this is my technical term, and it was pressing on the nerve or something like this. I don't know.
Sounds like sort of extruded, sort of a
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the word that they said. Yes.
Right.
This is it. And so by this point, I'd already seen so many specialists in Dubai. I had all the MRIs I could need, and then I came to Sri Lanka, and they don't have MRI technology here the same. So I got the old-fashioned, where they hold up the image and they put it on the wall and have to shine a light through it. So I did that here, which was quite interesting. And nobody could give me a definitive answer of what to do. So the insurance company I was with at the time, because being an expat, you have to get your insurance this way. The insurance company does this thing where you can get 3 opinions from 3 surgeons anywhere around the world, and they each do an independent report for you. So I got 3 reports from 3 very specialized people, and they all told me to do something different. So one was like join all the bones together, the other was like something else, and I just had enough. So anyways, going back to this coaching call. So at this point, I had tried to book myself in for surgery in Singapore, and I had found a surgeon that was willing to operate on me, having never met me. And he said all I needed to do was fly in, spend maybe 2 days there, and then I could fly back. And the insurance company denied it. They wouldn't cover me for this. No surprise. No surprise. So in this desperate few weeks of like, no one's going to cover it, can we afford for me to pay for it myself, I started talking about it on my coaching call, and we take it in turns. One is a client, one is the coach, and I was the client, and my subject was I just want to cut my back off because I can't take this anymore. It is so bad. It was just ridiculous. And this poor girl that's learning to coach is trying to coach me on how I shouldn't need to cut my back off. And it was like 10-minute coaching session. And after the 10 minutes, the tutor jumps in and he said, I'm supposed to give feedback to the coach, but in this case, I just have to tell you something. You need to check out the Dr. Sarno's Healing Back Pain book. And I was like, amazing. So I write it down. And
I'm all shivery.
I know. It's like it's pure chance that one tutor that was on that call on that particular day, because I could have gone to any of the sessions.
Wow.
And I could have picked any subject to be coached on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote down this book, and you know, the reason I believed the recommendation was because I trusted him, because he was one of my tutors, you know. It came from a good source, and plus I know they never give feedback to the client, so he'd gone out on a limb to do this for me. So I found the book the next day, I downloaded it, and by the end of maybe the second chapter, I knew this was it, and that was it. I was like, I can heal this. And so basically I finished the book. I knew what I needed to do, but I also knew I kind of needed the headspace to do it. So I started toying with the journaling and this, that, and the other when I was still in Sri Lanka. But I knew we had a holiday coming up in the UK. So I made this like mega plan. We flew into the UK, and for 45 days, I followed the wiki program thing on the free wiki program.
Yes.
And every single day, because my husband wasn't there, it was just me flying with the kids as well. So I could like, yeah, actually this is kind of normal for me as an expat, because you know, he has limited holidays, whereas I'll go home for 4 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
So every day I woke up about an hour and a half before the kids, which is early because they're little kids, and I sat and I did day 1, and then day 2, day 3. I would do one day every single day, very religiously, and I did the journaling, and this helped a lot, like a huge amount. And I finished that program, and then I started the other free program.
Yeah.
And I went through that.
Good.
Yeah, I worked in both. And even during that summer holiday, I can remember the pain getting less and less, or at least I was getting less scared of it, if you know what I mean. And I can remember one very specific example, reaching into a dishwasher to get a plate from the back shelf. At that point was impossible for me, like absolutely impossible. And so I know you, as SIRPA people, you may not recommend this approach, but I reached in to get the plate and I was in agony, put the plate on the side, and then I picked the plate back up and I put it back in the dishwasher. And I stood there and I did it over and over again until the pain stopped hurting. And it was literally like going through the pain barrier, and it was fascinating. And I think I only needed to do it one time for my brain to kind of go, yeah, okay, you don't need to be scared.
It's not scary, I can do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So gradually I started doing more and more things that I had stopped doing. And I also had realized I'd kind of reorganized my whole house so everything was at this level. I never needed to bend for anything. Everything I'd put on higher shelves. I sort of started to go a little bit back to normal. So yeah, that's
excellent. And I think it's more about how you do that. You know, it's when people are saying, you know, they're swearing at the pain and they're shouting it and I'm going to do this, and they're forcing it. That can create a lot of stress. It's not very self-compassionate, and it's not acknowledging how you feel. Whereas actually, the way you're doing it, if you're just deciding for yourself, you're choosing to do this and reassuring that your primal brain, I'm not reacting to it, I can do this, then that's great, because you're reprogramming your brain to realize it's a safe activity.
Yeah, it's true. I had a lot of kind of curiosity around it, and I remember at one point I'd made a pain diary. This was before I knew about and I had labeled, like, the bottom section of my back I'd labeled with numbers, like 1, 2, 3 was the top bit, 4, 5, 6, and each day I would put like 4. The part 4 was like this scale of pain, and part 1, you see, and it in hindsight it was good because I could see that the pain was moving around all the time. But when I was doing this dishwasher thing, I was like, oh, that's interesting, the pain is in 4, and then now the pain's in 2. As I was doing it was very much curiosity thing. So,
but still focusing, the more, if you're numbering it, that's more still putting a lot of focus on the pain, isn't it?
Yeah, although
there's fear related to that, whereas the more, I mean, over time you were able then presumably to let that go and not be thinking, okay, how is my back? Is it okay? Is it 4 that now that's flared up? Has it moved? because excessive focus on the area of the pain is usually fear related, and it can make, and it's also very dependent. You're dependent on the outcome. You're really looking and seeing, you know, is it better now? Is it not? Which again creates that excessive focus.
Yeah, I'm very glad I binned that. Actually, it was in my phone. I deleted it. It was literally like several times a day I was tracking the pain.
Wow.
But I switched this when I started the TMS stuff. I made a diary, like a separate diary, and each day, because I knew it would be really, really slow progress. So each day I wrote down like what I'd achieved that day with regards to like normal life, you know, like I did this today. And I recently found it, and and it says, it's so funny looking back on it. It's like, today I had no pain for 4 hours. You know,
today I bent into the dishwasher.
I know, but it's like, I think I needed to see this this tracker.
Yes.
So yeah, I think just to finish the kind of story of the back pain, I was in when we first got to Sri Lanka, we went to stay in my husband's hotel, which he has a resort hotel that has a flying trapeze thing, and it has like a gym with a treadmill and everything. And the first time we went, I was really, really upset because I was looking at this flying trapeze and I was like, I really, really want to go on the flying trapeze. Like, in the old version of me would have done that, you know. And the same with the gym. Like, there was no way I could go on a treadmill. And then about a year, it must have been probably about 1 year later, that we went to that resort again. And I went on the treadmill and I set a 5-minute timer. And I thought, no matter what happens, no matter how much it hurts, I am going to run for 5 minutes. And I had my favorite song on really loud, and there was nobody else in the gym. And I started running for the first time, and this was the first time in maybe in 10 years. Like, I hadn't ran for 10 years, and I was a runner before, like a lot. And the first minute was absolute agony, but I got through it. And by the end, I needed to turn it off at 5 minutes because I didn't want to overdo it. But I did it, and I was so proud. And then the next day, I did the flying trapeze.
Wow.
So I just needed more and more evidence to kind of prove that I'd done it. And then by the end of 2018, which was like a year and a half after we arrived in Sri Lanka, I did my first triathlon.
Fabulous. Wow. Now that's a very big achievement, far more than I bent over into the dishwasher. What an achievement. And to do the trapeze. And I know you've been learning to ride a unicycle as well, haven't you?
Oh yeah, this is the recent endeavor. Yeah, I can almost do it.
Yeah, you look pretty good on the video I saw.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So what I'm going to do is just ask anybody if they've got any questions to just pop them in the comments box, because then you can be answering those as well. But in the meantime then, so do you feel, how long before you felt that you were really able to just get on with your life and do what you wanted to do? From when you first came across Dr. Sana, let's say?
Maybe 6 months.
6 months, right.
Yeah, maybe less, actually. It's certain things, and I would forget about it. You know, from time to time, I would forget about my back. And it was gradually, like, I stopped thinking about my back. One of the things that helped me the most, to be honest, was telling people that I didn't have back pain anymore. Because when I arrived in Sri Lanka, I made friends, finally, you know, at the beginning I made friends. And I became very quickly known as the girl with the back pain. And so I would see these new friends. We had nothing in common. We'd only just met. So they would say things like, how's your back? Because it's all they could remember about me. So very, very quickly, I told them that I had cured my back pain, even though at that point I hadn't. And my husband was absolutely brilliant. He never, ever asked me about it because I told him not to. And, you know, these extinction burst things, I had a few of these, and I had already pre-warned my husband not to comment on it at all. Just let me suffer, because I will be fine in a few minutes. And he did. He was absolutely brilliant.
Great. So you had that support as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And I know you've been started been doing the SIRPA training as well. So obviously got this in a really keen to do this as well, to actually help others with this. And it integrates so beautifully with your coaching work and your Clifton Strengths work as well, doesn't it? And I know you found those strengths helpful for you in your recovery as well. Do you want to just say a little bit about that while we just wait?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it was interesting because Clifton Strengths, it helps you figure out what's right with you, your natural talents. And when you use your strengths, you go into a state of flow and you're happier and time flies and all the rest of it. So I realized in my corporate job in Dubai, I was using all my strengths, no problem. And often I would have less back pain at work and then more back pain at home because I realized I wasn't using my strengths at home. When I arrived in Sri Lanka, when it was at the worst, I looked back at my Strengths Finder. Once I knew about TMS, I was like, and then I got Strengths Finder out, looked at my natural talents, and then I found a voluntary job, which in my son's school. So every day I would drop him at school and I would stay there and work at the school. And for about 3.5 hours, I had no back pain at all, zero, because I was using my natural kind of flow. So this really was absolutely key, really, really key. And it also helped me to figure out where my stress triggers were, because whatever your natural strengths are, you're going to get triggered when you're not able to use your strengths and when somebody else is not appreciating your strengths, and
Excellent. And I know we focus on like values and looking what are people's values, and often we're triggered when our values are targeted. So for example, recently a client this week, one of her top one was honesty. So if somebody's not honest, then that even just sort of slightly dishonest, that's going to trigger her, obviously. So, but the Clifton Strengths I know is new to most of us, and I know you're giving us a lecture with you on Saturday where you're going to be doing some training on that, which is great. So we've got a few questions. People saying hello, and Catherine saying amazing story, thank you for sharing it. Carolyn says, do you still journal regularly?
Oh yes, I do, but not every single day. So like if I can't sleep, I will journal, definitely. But what I find now is not a lot comes up anymore. There's a sort of I feel like I'm empty. I feel like everything from the past is gone and everything from the present is gone. So it's only really if a new thing comes in. And I think working with strengths, knowing what my strengths are, if I get triggered by something, I can pretty much pinpoint what it is and why very, very quickly. So what I do now, to make journaling easier, I do like a spider diagram, and I literally write in the middle stress, and then from it I do little arrows, and then I'll write all the possible things it might be, and then on instinct I'll just expand on whichever category seems to be more stressful, and that helps a lot.
And it's just, it can be helpful, just whatever's going on, to just get it out of our heads, isn't it? Just literally just clarifying things by emptying our heads. And if we see it on paper, it can be easier to get clarity, can't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. We've got a message here from, I think it's Sean. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. He says, would you say that journaling helped your development and pain reduction more than the loss of fear, or was it the journaling that formed the strength of mind for you to lose that fear? Interesting question.
I think the loss of fear for me came very early on, because I got the TMS thing. It made sense logically. It made sense to me, the pain cycle. And I think the other thing that really helped my fear was that at that time I did not know about all the other resources that are available for TMS. So I only read one book. I honestly think if I had known that there is like loads of different people with loads of different theories, I think that would have panicked me and caused a lot more fear. But because it was one person, one message, I just bought into it very quickly. So fear, I think for me, was very, very separate. I think that journaling, whether or not I had back pain, I think that free wiki program everyone should do it. I feel like
Yeah.
everyone in the whole world should do it, because so much stuff just came out that I was holding on to for no reason. Like, and the funniest thing was, a lot of the things that I thought were small were big, you know, and the things that should have been hard to journal on were small. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree. And, you know, doing these online programs can just fill some of the gaps and help just condense things for people and give them more of a program to do. And I know Zoe's added the link to the TMS Wiki program, or one of them, and as you say, there are two. It's worth going through those. I mean, I tend to work with people who've already done them, because then, you know, that all that indicates is that actually they could do with some one-to-one individualized support and guidance. But yeah, absolutely, starting with those I think is great.
Yeah,
so,
I think the other thing is, I did journaling, but there were some things, I think some things are so hard you can't journal on them, because you'll never ask yourself those difficult questions. So those topics I took to coaching, because I was learning to be a coach. I had so many peer coaches, and so one by one I just worked the way through them. But I would definitely say there are some things that I think it really does help to have a coach or whoever can help you unpack those things.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And like you say, sometimes it's just it's scary to go there sometimes. But then when often you do, it's not as scary as you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Carolyn says, could you say more about the wiki journaling program? Well, Zoe's actually added a link to that. Could you just maybe give a bit of a summary? I know there's the two programs that as well.
It's what seemingly looks like the most old-fashioned website ever, but the content is amazing. It's made by a lot of the experts in the field, and they write the theory of. It's a bit like reading a book, and then it tells you what to journal, how to journal, what to journal on, and then there's a recovery story. So every day you have to read somebody else's recovery story, so you sort of feel like you're part of a community. And for me, it worked for me because it was structured. It was day 1, day 2, day 3, and so I formed a habit of doing this. So that was the biggest benefit.
Well, that's good.
Georgie, I wonder, do we have time if I can just share something else on my journey?
Of course.
So after fixing the back pain, I thought everything was fine. And because we live in Sri Lanka, in April of 2019, which was pretty long time after I'd cured everything, there was a terrorist attack in Sri Lanka. And my husband's hotel was one of the targets, and many people were killed in Sri Lanka overnight. And we were living here, literally we were next door to one hotel that was attacked, and my husband's hotel was the other side of the house. And it was, I would say, beyond scary to be living in that. Absolutely. And also knowing that every day he was going to work, which was now a crime scene, and I was with the kids, and we couldn't leave the house. You know, you can imagine, because there was other things happening. Like, you never knew when it was the end. You know, there were still bombers they'd not found and things. So it was a really hard time. Anyway, I took the kids to Dubai for about a month, and then I came back, and then I got rashes on my arms, like ridiculous. It looked like mosquito bites, and all over my legs, and that's what I thought it was. And so right up until the Christmas break, I was still thinking it was this kind of mosquito stuff, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And it took me a year. Yeah, it took me literally a year to realize that it was TMS.
Right.
And I couldn't believe it, because the reason I figured it out was because I was trying to trace back, when did this very first start? And I looked back in a diary I had, and I could remember the holiday. We went on a little beach thing, and I can remember where we were when it happened. And I looked at the date, and it was exactly 1 month after the terrorist attacks. So I just wanted to share that, because even though MS thing and I had no pain anymore, it came back in a really, really different way. So that,
a significant amount of trauma.
Yeah, but interestingly, just joining the dots alone started the rash to go
I'm sure.
a bit, you know. And then I have an amazing coach that I work with, and she did one session with me and treated it as PTSD, and I basically cried for 1 hour. But then after that, all of my arms and legs cleared up, literally overnight, just completely cleared up. So yeah.
And that just shows how just having that one-to-one to help guide you can be so helpful at times. But well done for making that connection as well.
Yeah, thanks.
And thank you for being brave enough to bring that up as well.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking it's sometimes it's very easy to think like you just did this journey and it was finished, but I do feel like I don't want to say have TMS because it sounds like a condition, but I think you will always have a body, and you will always have a body that reacts to stress. I think everyone does.
So we all have minds and bodies that are working together, and we all face different stresses. So absolutely, it's about that when we've got that understanding and the practices that we can integrate, then obviously, as long as we're not reacting with fear and then going down that route, the idea is with the understanding of the practices, we can get ourselves back far more quickly rather than being drawn down into the chronic side.
Yeah. During COVID, my eye started twitching like this, and then that was the point when I decided, definitely the eye twitching is TMS, and I was like, right, I need to move my coaching into helping people who also have this type of thing. So that was the turning point when we started COVID.
Right, yes. And that certainly, this work integrates so well with your work as well.
Yeah.
So, fantastic, thank you. So Liz says, so pleased to listen to your story, Gemma. Well done. When you were at your lowest point in coping with the symptoms, were there any particular techniques that worked to get you through the psychological side of daily pain?
The thing is, when I was at my lowest pain-wise, that was before I knew about TMS. So I didn't know any techniques other than I would lie on the floor. After I discovered TMS, that's when I started leaning into my strengths, I think. So journaling, yes, helped. But I think in the moment of being in pain, I would think to myself, well, what are my natural talents? What do I love doing? How does time fly? And then I would go and do that. And weirdly for me, I have a talent called discipline, which means I really like organizing or putting a system in place where there's no system. So I could go to any drawer in the house, empty the contents out, and then reorganize the drawer. And that would be enough to trick me, go into being in a state of flow.
That's interesting. Yeah. So that then fits well with that, what we call our SIRPA house of health, doesn't it? How do we nurture ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually as well? Because it's about having flow, about actually nurturing ourselves and having, glimmers of the emotions where we're feeling fulfilled, whatever that takes. And obviously the Clifton Strengths Finders is about helping us know what our strengths are to be able to know what might be helpful as well.
Yeah, and actually thinking about it, I did go for some massages, but here in Sri Lanka, there's a therapy place which is all blind, people that are blind, and they do shiatsu massage. But it's very basic, like very, very basic place. But I remember going there thinking, I'm going here to relax, not to try and fix my back pain.
Yes.
So this helped me a lot, and I treated it like a treat. I go there for a treat rather than a treatment.
Yes, quite. Great. Yes, thank you. Okay, Kate says, did the original journaling at first cause more symptoms or the sort of healing effect, or did symptoms diminish from the first journaling? And that is very individual. It depends really, doesn't it, Gemma, how much is there and how people are journaling. Because if you're beginning to stir things up, yes, symptoms can increase. But if we can bottom it, then obviously it then helps things to just calm down, especially if we can then look at what can we learn from this, how can we grow from this, etc. What would you say?
Did it make it worse?
Did your journaling at first
Yeah.
make things worse?
No, I don't think so. And the reason why I don't think so, I had such faith that it was working. I had such faith that even if it wasn't working on that particular day, I was going to be better in a year or 2 years or 3 years, however long it took. I never, ever, ever, right from the beginning, I never doubted that book I read was right, because it almost felt like that was my last lifeline. I didn't know about all the other, things. And I thought, if this doesn't work, I'm never going to recover. So it had to work. Does that make sense?
I think there's two things there that I picked up on: belief, the importance of belief. And it doesn't mean you have to, right from the beginning be full of belief, but showing your achievements, showing your own evidence, even if it's that you can sit on that chair pain-free, but you can't sit on that chair, or whatever, at times when you have pain when you think you wouldn't, and vice versa. So it's gradually building that belief up, isn't it, that could be really helpful.
Yeah, and what helped a lot was to look backwards and see when was the pain the worst before I knew about TMS, and making the connection between the spike in the pain and me being on a really short maternity leave with a husband that lost his job. Those two pieces of evidence were key. And the more I didn't really overly think about it, but every so often I'd be sitting there and suddenly I would remember a time when I was in pain, and then the reason why would just suddenly come to me from nowhere. So that my past evidence got a lot bigger very quickly the more I started.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what you've also said is that by having that hope and that belief that you would be better, you weren't doing a particular journaling with that outcome, by doing it, by saying that'll get rid of my pain, or it didn't matter whether the pain went up or down, recognizing it's not just doing one practice that is actually going to resolve your symptoms.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I didn't tell anyone I was doing this program, because I didn't have to, because I didn't really know anyone here when I first discovered TMS. And I think that if I'd have started telling everybody about it, then they would be like, oh, it doesn't sound very believable. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it was
so
like
it's often best to get yourself first.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a message from Joan. She says she's been doing TMS work for 5 years. Sensations move around. I'm better, but the back sensations just won't leave. Does this mean it's something I'm missing? I'll let you answer that, Gemma.
I don't know. I don't think that you're missing anything. The other thing is, there comes a point where you have to stop trying. I know everyone says that, but the way I got to the point of stop trying to take away the pain was just to make my life so fun and do all the things I like to do. And I just got on with it. I found this voluntary job, and and now I'm doing coaching. So I'm again using all my strengths, but the minute that you have time on your hands to start thinking about the pain, then the pain comes back. But then I guess there's the counter argument that you're then being busy to avoid thinking about the pain. I don't know.
I think, like you've said before, sometimes it actually helps to have somebody reflecting back to you. And I've worked with people who've had problems for years and years, who've then been able to gain the insights because they've got somebody else actually reflecting back and being able to help see what might be going on, and in your case looking at the strengths and seeing how those might fit in. So it's not about missing something necessarily, but it's about definitely finding another way through, and that for some people that could be having a strong enough belief. For some people it could be that they're maybe avoiding some of the things from the past. For others, very often it's about not really getting to grips with how they create self-induced stress, or how symptoms are triggered in the moment and bringing up things from the past. For others, it's about not being really not recognizing their emotions, not being able to be emotionally aware, and focusing more on the symptoms and being in their head rather than in their body. So everybody's different. That's the thing. There's no one way to just, do this, you'll get better, because we've all got different minds, experiences, past, etc.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Georgia, and I didn't understand exactly what the question meant. I thought it was more of a medical answer, but something that helped me also a lot was having that person, like a coach, working with you. If you have a core belief of something, it's your way of seeing the world. You're never going to question that, no matter how much journaling you do. You can't. Well, I guess there's some people that might be able to, but it's very difficult to unbelieve something that's a belief. And so one of the processes I take clients through now is I actually have a process called the belief closet. And they literally go into, it's like a visualization. You go into a visualization and you choose a new belief that's going to serve you better. But you could never do that work on your own because you don't know your beliefs. Yeah, well, I guess you do know. You do know your beliefs.
Don't question your beliefs.
Yes, you don't question them. And so when you work with a coach, they can hear the language that you're using, and very quickly they can help you pinpoint the one thing you maybe can't ever see yourself, I guess. Yeah.
I think that's very relevant. Very relevant. There's so much stuff that we can't see because it's so automated within us. And it's habitual. They're all habits. And that's why it can take time to change these things.
Yeah, and the other thing on this as well is that your beliefs were given to you by your parents, most likely, or primary caregivers, you know, when you were little. And so if somebody gave you a belief and that parent is no longer around, you're not going to want to give up that belief because that, you know, that could be your last link to them. And I found this with a few clients that they've been holding on to beliefs to be closer to their parents, you know.
Yeah. Great, thank you. So Lucinda says, what do you think caused your symptoms in the first place? Again, it's not always one thing.
Yeah, I can tell you what the injury was. I was balancing on somebody else making a pyramid of people in an acrobatic class. So that was the injury. And is she asking, like, what was the trauma I was dealing with at the time, or?
Well, I don't know, Lucinda. What do you think caused your symptoms? I mean, from what you're saying, that was a trigger, the actual initial injury. But we also know that evidence shows that why pain becomes persistent is nothing to do with how severe the incident, but actually about is the person depressed at the time of injury? Are they anxious? Do they have negative beliefs about pain being permanent? And have they had previous trauma? And the fact that that was happening when you were going through so much stress in your life, I would suggest that was very relevant, and it just happened to be that was the trigger.
And on the day that I did the injury, that injury would never have normally hurt me. I was at that point, I was like a dancer, you know, it's normal kind of injury. But on that same
day, or was it an acute onset of pain? And that's back. It's the situation that's the issue, really. But yeah, like you say, if you're used to doing that sort of thing, and it doesn't usually cause problems.
Yeah, but on that day, I was also there with a friend that I was about to say goodbye to, as I moved abroad in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whenever it was. And so we had already packed all our suitcases and everything, you know, like, and so I think there was the fact that I had to quickly go to the doctor because I didn't know what to expect in Dubai. It's all that uncertainty. That's what caused it, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and Lucinda also says, you said you didn't feel fear early on, but did you ever feel hopelessness and despair? And if so, what did you do to not feel this?
I had a mantra. So somebody asked me about this recently. I had a mantra, and I can't remember what it was now, but it was something like, I am strong. I would say something over and over again, and this is so cheesy, but I had on my computer, I had the back screen or whatever you call it was pictures of really healthy, strong backs.
Yeah, right.
I just looked at it all the time. And the other thing is, I have the talent futuristic, which means I'm always dreaming about what could be, what might be. And I realized that because I was always dreaming about the future, the negative image that I'd created for myself was me in a wheelchair looking after the kids. And I was actually Googling how to take care of children in a wheelchair, because at this point I couldn't lift Chloe up. I couldn't lift her high enough to get her in the high chair. So when I figured out TMS, I changed that futuristic picture to me running behind my son as he learned to ride his bike.
Yeah.
And so that became like my anchor image of him learning to ride.
I think that's the benefits and drawbacks of having a really good imagination, because we know the evidence base is strong for using our visualization, our imagination. And so it can be really helpful as we try and reframe things. But it also can be really challenging if you're somebody who's really good with imagery and you're imagining your back crumbling or being in a wheelchair or whatever. I know I had that image of myself as well. I really thought that by the time I hit 50, I'd be in a wheelchair. But I only felt that when I had a bad back. But it kept being a recurring problem. So I did start believing that. Yeah, so excellent.
And having my little diary helped, because I could write in the diary, had a bad day today, tomorrow will be better. And then I would flick back and look at the previous days that were really good.
Yeah, yes, excellent. Okay, thank you. So what else have we got? Okay, Carolyn says, which of Dr. Sarno's books did you read?
Healing Back Pain, I think it's called.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. Other people saying that they can relate to the hopelessness and despair, and that Lucinda mentioned, and I think that's common. If you are struggling with pain and you feel your life's ended, then of course that all comes as part and parcel of severe chronic TMS. Okay, Catherine Pollock says, what was the name of the book regarding discovering your strengths?
Oh, it's called it's called Gallup. Well, the company, it's Gallup Clifton Strengths, and you can go online and anyone can do the assessment themselves. I think it's £20 in the UK from the shop, and it gives you a report straight away of your top 5 talents, and then you can read it yourself, understand it. There's loads of stuff on the internet about it, loads and loads of videos explaining all the different talents.
So at the end of this, maybe you could put a link in the comments under the video on Facebook.
Yeah, I'd love to. I think that StrengthsFinder really comes alive when, like what we were saying earlier, when someone helps shine a light back on who you are.
Yeah.
Because they're your strengths. So to you, you'll get the report and you'll be like, well, there's nothing special about that, is there? Because you don't realize, like, not everyone is like you, Yeah. I had this big belief. I have the talent called Achiever, and I had this big belief that I was a really hard worker and everyone else in the world was lazy.
Yeah.
And it was only doing this assessment that helped me appreciate I am who I am, and I see the world through this lens, and everyone else has their own special thing. So, and actually the assessment, I think I've started to realize that when you know what your strengths are, you also can design a TMS program around that. So, for example, somebody who has analytical talent needs a lot of answers. So somebody with analytical will need to spend a very long time on the research of this to get the answers they need before they will buy into it. Somebody that's got the communication talent will need to spend a long time talking to somebody, let's say, about their journey or about their successes. So once you know who you are, you can kind of play to that for your journey as well. So.
Excellent, thank you. So don't worry, everybody. Gemma will put some links to any other events or things that you're running as well. And Becky says, glad to find this, thank you. I definitely struggle with beliefs, including from previous religion, and even though I can challenge and counteract with them, they keep coming up. I'm a dancer and have had pain issues start since coronavirus. Glad to find pain science through chiropractor, SIRPA, curable in so many research and places exploring mind-body connection. Good, well done, Becky, I'm glad you're here. Lucinda says, how many days or weeks went by when you realised you didn't have back pain symptoms anymore?
How many days or weeks went by?
Was it before you realised you didn't have back pain symptoms anymore? Maybe it's
it's so funny because I found this diary recently that has all these answers in, and I couldn't find it. But there's one page. It's just in a school book type thing. There's one page where it says, "I had a PFD, which is a pain-free day." So I created this name PFD, and I remember doing high five with my husband. I've had a PFD, and that was while I was still using these little books that are this little small books.
Yeah.
I was probably about halfway through that book when I wrote it. So however many pages is in that book is when I had my first PFD. But then it wasn't suddenly magically no more pain. the next day I did have some pain, you know, on and off, but the gap between the PFDs got longer gradually. And, you know, even now, every so often, if I'm really wound up about something, the first place I can feel stress is in my back. But I just don't call it pain anymore. Now I call it, I just need to stretch or relax, you know. Because I don't know if I really answered that.
Using that word can actually, you know, exacerbate things, because that's what the primal brain is fearful of. It's creating pain to protect you from the stress and underlying emotions. So it's actually saying the name pain and focusing on the pain can make things worse. So using a silly name can help if you're not completely able to ignore it. Just changing the name to something completely different can be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so I also don't really, even if I could answer that question, I don't think it's necessarily helpful to know exactly how many days somebody else did it in, you know, because we're all very different. And I think be kind to yourself and you know, almost imagine it's going to take 5 years, and if it's any less than that, woohoo, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, rather than doing everything. And I think this is what a lot of problems are caused by doing an emotional awareness practice or a somatic tracking practice or journaling to get rid of the pain. Because all this trying to get rid of creates resistance. And the more we work on ourselves, and that's what we're talking about with working with values, with working with strengths, looking at how we can nurture ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually, doing things that make us laugh. That's all about letting go and not trying. And when we start letting go, then we're in the flow, and then we don't need the pain, rather than trying to get rid of the pain.
Yeah, that's true. I said to a client once, because she was like, oh, it's just not going. And I said, well, imagine if you had to spend your whole life with this pain. Let's just say that's a fact. You have got this pain for the rest of your life. How can you start enjoying life now? You know, like if you know, how can you start living? Because I almost had to show her that she'd stopped living. She'd put her life completely on hold to focus on this TMS work. And I was like, let's pretend your pain's never going to go. What are you going to do to be happy today? You know, and she started talking about picking flowers and doing all this stuff. And I don't know if that helps or if that's confusing. It worked. It worked in
very helpful. It's a good question. Okay, well, we're coming to the end now anyway. Lots of people saying thank you very much. And yes, it will be still on the Facebook page. Because it's been recorded there, and everybody's saying thank you so much. And yeah, it's been really interesting to hear more about your recovery, Gemma. So thank you everybody for listening in. We'll put anything else in the comments box underneath, and if you want to know anything else, then we'll all just pop in and see if there's anything else that we can respond to. But in the meantime, thank you very much, Gemma.
Well, and thank you to everyone that made the time to listen. Thank you.
And I hope people have found it helpful, and people who then watch it, the recording as well. Okay, bye everybody. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.